21 years of raising a daughter alone. And the thing that breaks you isn't the betrayal. It's not the restaurant, or the 19 witnesses, or the way she handed your dream to a stranger like it was a coupon she'd found in her purse. No, it's the 4 seconds of silence from the man whose mortgage you co-signed. The way he studied his plate like the answer to everything was hiding underneath a $40 fillet. I'm sitting in my truck right now, engine off, windows down, Pacific breeze coming through smelling like diesel and salt water. There's a satellite phone in my hand, and it's ringing. The number on the screen is a Miami area code. I didn't know it yet. Not when I bought that blue polo shirt, not when I pressed the creases into the sleeves with my own iron. But that phone call is the sound of a world rearranging itself. I'm going to answer it in a minute. But first, let me tell you how we got here. Welcome back to A Father's Silence. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the quietest people in the room are usually the ones holding the most cards. We tell stories about dignity, patience, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. Subscribe so you never miss a story. We've got a real one for you today. My name is Ray Delgado. I'm 61 years old, and I'm a shipyard welder at National Steel and Shipbuilding in San Diego, California. Been there 36 years. I started 3 weeks after my 25th birthday, and I haven't missed a shift that wasn't owed to me since. I drive a 2009 Ford F-150 with 241,000 miles on it. The passenger seat has a permanent indentation from my welding hood, and the bed has so many scorch marks it looks like a meteorite landing zone. The air conditioning hasn't worked since 2019, and I never fixed it because there was always something more important to spend money on. There was always Emily. My wife, Maria, died when Emily was 4. Brain aneurysm. No warning. One afternoon she was making arroz con pollo and singing along to the radio, and by 6 o'clock that evening, I was sitting in a hospital hallway being told that the woman I'd married at 22 was never coming home. I raised Emily alone. Completely alone. I was the one who braided her hair before school, and I'll be honest with you, I was terrible at it for the first 2 years. I watched YouTube tutorials at midnight after 12-hour shifts in the yard, practicing on a rope I'd tied to the kitchen chair. By 3rd grade, I could do a French braid that made the other mothers ask who'd done it. I never told them. I just smiled. I was the one who coached her softball team when she was 11, even though I didn't know a thing about softball. I read 3 books about it. I built a batting cage in the backyard out of welding scraps and chain link fencing I pulled from a job site dumpster with permission. Her team went 14-2 that year. She still has the trophy somewhere. Or she did. I was the one who worked double shifts, 7 days a week for 4 straight months, to pay for her wedding. $41,000. I didn't take a loan. I just worked. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner and welded until my hands felt like they belonged to someone else. Here's something people don't know about me. I hold a certified welding inspector license, and I've been offered supervisor and management positions 4 times. I turned them down. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because the floor pays overtime and the office doesn't, and Emily always needed something. Braces, a car, college textbooks. So I stayed on the floor under the ships, in the heat, in the rain, in the dark. But here's the thing about spending 36 years cutting and joining metal in confined spaces. You learn patience. You learn that rushing a weld makes it brittle. You learn that the strongest joints are the ones you build slowly, with control, with the right amount of heat. Not too much, not too little. You learn to wait. Make 2 cups of coffee. 1 for me, 1 for Maria. I set hers on the kitchen windowsill where she used to stand and look out at the lemon tree she planted the year Emily was born. The tree is still there. It still produces. I drink mine and I talk to her. I tell her about the week. I tell her about Emily. Lately, I haven't had much good to say. Now, let me tell you about Patricia Ashford. Patricia is Emily's mother-in-law. She's 63, a retired real estate office manager from La Jolla. She wears linen. She drives a white Lexus SUV. She has her nails done every Thursday and her hair colored every 6 weeks. A very specific shade of champagne blonde that she refers to, without irony, as coastal. The first time I met Patricia was at Emily and Tyler's engagement dinner, 5 years ago. She was polite. She complimented my handshake. She said, "Ray, I can tell you're a man who works with his hands. There's honor in that. And she seemed to mean it. She asked about Maria. She listened. She touched my arm when I got quiet. I thought she was kind. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time Patricia Ashford would ever treat me like an equal. The slights started small. They always do, like hairline cracks in a weld bead, invisible to the naked eye, but if you know what to look for, you can see the failure coming long before the joint gives way. The first one happened at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Emily hosted. 22 people in her dining room, which is really too many for the space, but she wanted everyone together. Patricia arrived with a catered charcuterie board from someplace in Del Mar that cost more than my weekly groceries. When it came time to sit, I noticed there was no place card for me at the main table. Emily had set me at the small folding table near the kitchen, the one she'd put out for the overflow. Her cousin Jared was there, and Tyler's college roommate Kevin. Nice enough guys, but I was the only parent at that table. I didn't say anything. I just sat down and unfolded my napkin and told myself it was a simple oversight. Too many people, not enough chairs. These things happen. But I noticed Patricia was seated at the head of the main table, directly across from Emily, in the chair where I'd sat the year before. The second slight happened at Emily's birthday in March. I'd spent 3 weekends building her a hand-forged garden gate. I used reclaimed wrought iron from a decommissioned Navy vessel. Beautiful old metal with character you can't buy. I scrolled the top rail into a vine pattern and welded a small hummingbird at the center because Maria used to call Emily her little hummingbird. Took me 60 hours. I sanded it. I sealed it. I loaded it into the bed of my truck and drove it 40 minutes to Emily's house in Chula Vista. When I brought it in, still wrapped in moving blankets, Patricia was already there. She'd given Emily a spa weekend package. 2 nights at some resort in Carlsbad. Emily opened it first and screamed. She hugged Patricia. She said, "Oh my God. Mom P. This is incredible. Mom P." When Emily opened my gift, she smiled. She said, "Oh, Dad. That's so sweet." She leaned it against the garage wall. Tyler helped me carry it. He didn't say much. Emily went back to talking about the spa weekend. I drove home that night with the moving blankets still in my truck bed, and I sat in my driveway for 11 minutes with the engine running. I counted. 11 minutes. I didn't know it yet, but that gate is still leaning against her garage wall. She never installed it. The third slight was quieter, and in some ways it was the worst. It happened 6 weeks before Tyler's birthday dinner, at a Sunday brunch at Emily's house. I'd brought my famous chilaquiles, Maria's recipe, the one Emily used to beg me to make every Saturday morning. I walked in with the casserole dish, and Patricia was already in the kitchen. She looked at my dish and said, very lightly, almost sweetly, "Oh, Ray, you brought your little Mexican thing again. I already ordered eggs Benedict from that new brunch place. But I'm sure someone will pick at yours." She said it with a smile. She said it the way people say cruel things when they want you to feel the cut but not be able to point to the blade. Emily was standing right there, pouring orange juice. She didn't say a word. I set the dish on the counter and said, "Maria's recipe. Emily's favorite." Emily looked at me. She looked at Patricia. Then she said, "Dad, can you move that to the side table? We need the counter space for the Benedict." I moved it. I didn't know it yet, but I was already running out of counter space in my daughter's life. Tyler's 40th birthday dinner was held at Harbor House, an upscale waterfront restaurant on the Embarcadero, the kind of place where the napkins are heavier than some of my work shirts, the kind of place where they bring you a bread basket and describe each roll like it has a backstory. 19 people, Tyler's family, Emily's friends, Patricia, seated in the center of the long table like a queen holding court, Tyler at the head, Emily beside him. I wore my new blue polo shirt. I'd bought it at Kohl's 3 days earlier, $34.99, which is more than I've spent on a shirt in maybe 10 years. I pressed it with the iron I use on my work pants. I tucked it into my cleanest pair of khakis. I even wore the leather belt Emily gave me 2 Christmases ago, the one I'd been saving for special occasions. I looked good. I felt good. And I felt good because, for the first time in 36 years, I had something to look forward to. $14,250. That's what I'd saved. Dollar by dollar. Overtime shift by overtime shift. 36 years of brutal heat in summer. Temperatures inside ship hulls reaching 130 degrees. And freezing rain in winter, welding on exposed decks with water running down the back of my neck. I saved that money the way I do everything. Slowly, carefully, and without telling anyone. I'd booked a single luxury balcony suite on the Pacific Majesty. A 14-day Hawaiian cruise. My first real vacation. Ever. The first time in my life I would sleep past 5 a.m. without an alarm. Eat a meal I didn't cook. And look at the ocean from something other than a shipyard dock. I told Emily about it 2 weeks earlier. I was so excited I could barely get the words out. I showed her the booking confirmation on my phone. She smiled. She said, "That's great, Dad." I didn't know what she was already planning. Dinner was halfway through when it happened. The entrees had just been cleared. Tyler was opening gifts. Patricia was on her second glass of Sancerre. Emily stood up. She had an envelope in her hand. "I have one more surprise," she said, looking at Patricia. "Mom P, this is for you." Patricia opened the envelope. Inside was a printed cruise ticket.
À Balcony Suite.
On the Pacific Majesty. Departing from Miami. 14 days. Hawaii. My ticket. I felt the blood leave my hands first. Then my face. Patricia gasped. She put her hand over her mouth.
Emily, sweetheart, no.
This is too much. Emily smiled. Wide, proud, performative, and said, "You deserve it. You've been like a real mother to me. Like a real mother." I opened my mouth, but Emily turned to me first. She looked straight at me. Not with cruelty, not with malice, with something worse. Certainty. Complete certainty that what she was doing was right. "Dad, I gave your ticket to Patricia," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, rehearsed. "She actually deserves to enjoy something this nice." A man who spent his life in steel-toed boots and dirty coveralls wouldn't even know what to do on a ship like that. 19 people heard her say it. The waiter standing 3 feet behind me heard it. The couple at the next table heard it. The whole southern end of Harbor House heard my daughter explain to me. The man who braided her hair, who built her batting cage, who worked 7 days a week to pay for her wedding, that I wasn't good enough to sit on a boat. I looked at Tyler Ashford. The man whose $91,000 mortgage I co-signed because his credit wasn't good enough to qualify a loan. The man I helped move furniture for. The man I lent my truck to when his car was in the shop. The man who called me Pops and clapped me on the shoulder at barbecues. Tyler looked down at his plate. He moved a piece of asparagus with his fork. He said nothing. That silence was louder than anything Emily said. That silence was a door closing. I heard it lock. Patricia was already dabbing her eyes. "Oh, Emily, I'm going to treasure this." The table murmured. People smiled. Someone clapped. I sat there in my $34.99 blue polo shirt, and I felt every single one of my 61 years settle into my bones like ballast. Emily looked at me, waiting for me to make a scene, maybe, waiting for me to cry. Waiting for me to do whatever she thought a man in steel-toed boots does when he's been gutted in public. I picked up my water glass. I took a sip. I set it down. "All right," I said. "That's all." "Just, all right?" Emily blinked. Patricia tilted her head. Tyler glanced up from his plate for half a second, then looked away. "All right?" Emily said. "All right?" I repeated. I folded my napkin. I placed it beside my plate. I stood up. "Happy birthday, Tyler." And I walked out of Harbor House into the salt air of the San Diego waterfront, and I didn't look back. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. I sat in my truck in the Harbor House parking lot for 23 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the dashboard. The numbers changed, and I watched each one. I didn't cry. I want you to understand that. Not because I'm too tough to cry. I cried the day Maria died. I cried at Emily's kindergarten graduation. I cried when I finished paying off the house. I cry when it matters. But this required something different. This required clarity. I thought about Emily at 4 years old, standing in the doorway of our bedroom the morning after Maria's funeral, holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear, asking me, "Daddy, is Mommy coming back from the sleepover? Daddy, is Mommy coming back from the sleepover?" I thought about Emily at 16, sitting on the hood of my truck outside the school after a boy broke her heart, eating gas station ice cream with me while I told her she was worth 10 of him and she'd see it someday. I thought about Emily at 27, walking down the aisle in the dress I'd worked 4 months of double shifts to afford, looking back at me with tears in her eyes and mouthing, "Thank you, Daddy." And then I thought about Emily at 35, standing in Harbor House, telling me I wasn't good enough for a vacation I'd earned with my own 2 scarred, calloused, arc-burned hands. I started the truck. Now, here's something you need to understand. Something Emily doesn't know. Something Patricia doesn't know. Something Tyler, with his financed BMW and his co-signed mortgage, certainly doesn't know. That cruise ticket? The one Emily handed over like it was a magazine subscription? It was booked in my name, paid from my account, registered to my passport, with my photograph, my emergency contacts, my dietary preferences, and my specific balcony suite selection. Suite 714, portside, upper deck, the one with the extended veranda that faces the sunset side. Emily didn't transfer the booking. She couldn't transfer the booking. What she did was print a copy of the confirmation email. My confirmation email, which I'd forwarded to her when I was excited and trusting and foolish. And she put it in an envelope and she handed it to Patricia like it was hers to give. But a printed email is not a boarding pass. And a boarding pass requires the name on the reservation. And the name on the reservation is Raymond Antonio Delgado. I drove home. I parked in my driveway. I walked inside. I made a cup of coffee, Maria's mug, the yellow one with the cracked handle, and I sat at my kitchen table and I opened my laptop. First, I called the cruise line. Not from anger, from precision. I confirmed my reservation. I updated my emergency contact information. I added a security flag to my booking, a feature I'd learned about from a fellow welder named Doug who'd had his identity compromised once. The flag meant that no changes to the reservation could be made without verbal confirmation from me, using a code phrase I selected. The code phrase I chose was hummingbird. Then I called my union rep. Not about the cruise, about the mortgage. I asked him for the name of that attorney he'd mentioned last year, the one who handled contract and financial disputes. He gave me the number. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled out the fireproof lockbox I keep in the bedroom closet. Inside it are Maria's death certificate, Emily's birth certificate, the deed to my house, and a manila folder I've carried for 18 years. Inside that folder is a document most people in my life have never seen. My CWI certification, yes, but also a consultant evaluation from the Navy's ship repair facility that lists my billable rate at $185 per hour for specialized titanium and exotic alloy work. I've been doing side consulting for military subcontractors for 9 years. Quietly, efficiently, the same way I do everything. I didn't know it yet. Not fully, not in that moment. But the next 72 hours were going to teach my daughter something about the man she dismissed. Something about underestimating a person who builds things for a living. Because a man who can join 2 pieces of metal so precisely that they hold together under 60,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, that man knows something about structural integrity. And he knows when a structure is about to fail. I felt a small, brief ache for Emily. I did. She's my daughter. She's Maria's daughter. And somewhere inside the woman who stood up at that restaurant is the 4-year-old who asked me if Mommy was coming back. I have to believe that girl is still in there. But belief doesn't mean permission. And love doesn't mean surrender. I closed the laptop. I finished my coffee. I rinsed Maria's mug and set it back on the windowsill. Then I picked up the phone and called the attorney. The attorney's name was Grace Villanueva. She worked out of a small office in Barrio Logan, 10 minutes from the shipyard. I liked her immediately. She had a firm handshake and a framed photo of her father in a hard hat on her desk. She listened without interrupting, which is rarer than people think. I told her everything. The cruise, the dinner, the co-signed mortgage, Tyler's silence. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up and said 2 words. How much? 91,000. I said. I co-signed Tyler's mortgage 4 years ago. He qualified for nothing on his own. I put my name, my credit, and my house on the line. Grace nodded. And has he made the payments on time? Every one. But that's not the point. No, she said. It's not. Within 48 hours, Grace filed a formal demand for release from the co-signer agreement, citing material change in the relationship and potential financial exposure. She also sent a certified letter to Tyler Ashford informing him that if he could not refinance the mortgage independently within 90 days, I would exercise my right to petition for a forced sale of the property to recover my financial exposure. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Tyler called me 14 minutes after the mail came. Pops? Pops, what is this? I was in my garage, grinding a piece of scrap steel for a project. I turned off the grinder. Read it again, Tyler. It says you're pulling off the mortgage? You can't do that. We can't refinance. My credit isn't. I know what your credit is, Tyler. I've known since before you married my daughter. Silence. The same kind of silence he'd offered at Harbor House. But this time it wasn't comfortable. Pops, this is, Emily's in Miami, I said. With your mother. On a trip they're taking because your wife decided I wasn't good enough to use my own cruise ticket. More silence. Tyler, I'm going to say this once. You sat at that table. You heard what she said to me, and you moved a piece of asparagus. That's what 36 years of my sweat got from you. A piece of asparagus. He started to speak. I turned the grinder back on. I called him back 20 minutes later when I was ready. You've got 90 days, I said. That's more grace than I got at Harbor House. Emily called the next day. From Miami. I could hear Patricia's voice in the background, high-pitched, indignant, saying something about ungrateful and senile. Dad, what did you do? Tyler is freaking out. I exercised a legal right, Emily. You're threatening to take our house? I'm removing myself from a financial obligation to people who don't respect me. There's a difference. Dad, this is insane. You're being dramatic. I gave Patricia your cruise ticket as a gift. It was a nice thing to do. It wasn't yours to give. Silence. It wasn't yours to give, Emily. It was my money, my booking, my name, my vacation. The first one I've ever taken in 61 years of living. And you handed it away in front of 19 people and told me I wasn't good enough to use it. Dad, I'm not finished. You called her a real mother. Your real mother died making dinner for you. She's buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in plot 4417. I bring her flowers every other Sunday. I have never missed. Not once in 21 years. Emily was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the Miami airport in the background. Announcements, rolling luggage, the hum of 1,000 strangers going somewhere. The booking is in my name, Emily. You printed a piece of paper. That's all you gave Patricia. A piece of paper. She hung up. This is the part one didn't see in person, but I heard about it in detail from the cruise line's guest services manager who called me personally. Emily and Patricia arrived at the port of Miami at 7:15 a.m. on boarding day. They had luggage. They had matching sun hats. Patricia was wearing a new white linen pantsuit. They approached the check-in counter with the printed confirmation email, 2 forms of Patricia's identification, and the confidence of 2 women who believed the world was arranged for their convenience. The counter agent scanned the confirmation. The system flagged it immediately. The reservation belonged to Raymond Antonio Delgado. The security flag was active. No modifications could be made without the code phrase, delivered verbally by the account holder. I'm sorry, ma'am, the agent said. This reservation is not in your name, and it's been secured by the booking holder. Patricia's face, I'm told, went through several phases. Confusion, disbelief, then a very specific shade of red that her champagne blonde hair did nothing to soften. Emily tried to explain. She told them her father had gifted the ticket. The agent asked for written authorization. There was none. She asked for the booking holder's verbal confirmation. Emily called me. I answered on the second ring. Dad, tell them to let Patricia board. Tell them right now.
No.
Dad. Emily, I'm going to say this clearly so the agent can hear me. My name is Raymond Antonio Delgado. I am the sole booking holder for Suite 714 on the Pacific Majesty. I do not authorize any transfer, substitution, or modification to this reservation. The code phrase is hummingbird. Maria's word for you, Emily. I chose it because I wanted to remember the daughter I raised. Not the one standing in a Miami cruise terminal trying to give away my life. The line went dead. 3 things happened in the next 72 hours. First, Grace Villanueva filed the formal cosigner release petition with the county. Tyler's mortgage was now on a 90-day clock. If he couldn't refinance a loan, and with a credit score of 588, he could not, the property would be subject to forced sale proceedings. The equity in that house was $214,000. My financial exposure as cosigner was the entire $91,000 remaining balance. Second, I received a call from Captain David Munoz, a retired Navy officer I'd done consulting work for. He'd heard through the grapevine. Shipyard grapevines are short and loud about what had happened. He offered me something I hadn't expected. A consulting contract with a defense subcontractor in Honolulu. 3 weeks of work. Exotic alloy welding for a submarine refit. Billable rate, $185 per hour. Housing provided. The contract started in 16 days. Third, and this is the part that matters most, I drove to the cruise line's San Diego satellite office. I sat down with a booking agent. I confirmed my reservation for Suite 714 on the Pacific Majesty. I updated the embarkation port from Miami to San Diego, which was an available option for the Pacific route. The agent smiled and said, "Mr. Delgado, your suite is one of our finest. You're going to love it." I said, "I know." And for the first time in weeks, I meant it. 14 months later. I'm writing this from the lanai of a rented cottage in Kailua, on the windward side of Oahu. The consulting contract with the defense subcontractor turned into a standing relationship. I fly out here every quarter for 3-week stints. The rest of the time, I'm in San Diego, still at the shipyard, still welding. But now I work 4 days a week instead of 6. I take Fridays off. I drive down to Coronado and eat fish tacos on the beach and watch the ships come in, and I think about Maria, and I think about the years I spent believing that sacrifice was the same as love. It's not. Sacrifice is what you give. Love is what comes back. The cruise was everything I'd hoped it would be. I sat on that balcony. Suite 714, portside, sunset side, and I watched the Pacific Ocean turn colors I didn't know existed. I ate meals I couldn't pronounce. I talked to strangers who didn't know I was a welder, and when I told them, they asked me questions about it like it was interesting. Because it is interesting. Because joining 2 pieces of metal with light and heat is one of the oldest forms of creation there is, and I've been doing it for 36 years, and I'm damn good at it. I didn't think about Emily for the first 3 days. On the 4th day, I stood on the balcony at sunrise and I talked to Maria. I told her I was sorry. Not for the cruise. For the years I spent teaching our daughter that my comfort didn't matter. That my needs were always last. That Daddy would always absorb the slight, swallow the hurt, fold his napkin and say, "All right." I taught Emily that I was inexhaustible. And she believed me. And then she acted on it. That's on me. Partly. Not entirely. But partly. Tyler and Emily's house sold 9 months ago. Tyler couldn't refinance. His mother Patricia, despite her La Jolla linen and her Lexus SUV, did not offer to help. She told Tyler it was not her responsibility. The house sold for $387,000. After the mortgage payoff, closing costs, and fees, Tyler and Emily walked away with just under $118,000. My cosigner obligation was fully discharged. They rent now. A 2-bedroom apartment in National City. Emily works at a dental office. Tyler got a raise at his logistics company, which is good. They're not destitute. I didn't want them destitute. I wanted them aware. Emily called me once about 4 months ago. It was a Sunday morning. I was making coffee. Maria's mug was on the windowsill. Dad. Emily. A long pause. The kind of pause where you can hear someone deciding whether to be honest or strategic. I'm sorry, she said. About all of it. I don't know when I started seeing you as less, but I did. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything for a moment. I listened to the coffee maker. I looked at the lemon tree through the window. Do you remember what your mother called you? I asked. Hummingbird, she said, and her voice cracked. She called you that because you were always moving, always buzzing from one thing to the next. She said the trick with hummingbirds is they have to stop sometimes. They have to hover. Otherwise they miss what's right in front of them. Emily was crying. I could hear it. I'm not closing the door, Emily. But I'm not holding it open with my body anymore. Either. You want to walk through it, you walk through it on your own feet. And you knock first. She said, Okay, Dad. We've talked twice since then. Short calls. Careful calls. She asked about my work. I told her about Honolulu. She asked if the lemon tree was still producing. I told her it was. She didn't ask about the gate she never installed. I didn't bring it up. Tyler sent me a text on my birthday. It said, Happy birthday, Pops. I'm sorry I looked at my plate. It was 7 words more than he'd offered at Harbor House, and I'll give him credit for that. I texted back, Thank you, Tyler. Nothing more. Nothing less. There is one person who stayed. My neighbor, Doug. The same Doug who told me about security flags on booking accounts. Doug is 67, a retired electrician, a widower like me. We sit on my porch on Saturday evenings and drink beer and say almost nothing, and it is the most honest relationship I have. He was the one who drove me to the San Diego cruise terminal on embarkation day. He shook my hand and said, You earned this, Ray. Every inch of it. He was right. I did. Patricia, I'm told, hasn't spoken to Emily since the mortgage situation. Apparently, a woman who calls herself Mom P has a limit to how much mothering she's willing to do when it starts costing money. I take no pleasure in that. I take no pleasure in any of this. Pleasure was never the point. The point was the weld, the joint, the structural integrity of a man's dignity. You can heat it. You can hammer it. You can even crack it if you hit it hard enough. But if the base metal is sound, if the man underneath is solid, it holds. It holds. I want to tell you something I've learned in 61 years. It's not complicated, but it took me most of my life to understand it. The people who love you will sometimes test you. That's normal. That's human. Children push boundaries. Spouses argue. Families fracture and reform and fracture again. That's the rhythm of closeness, and if you're lucky, the fractures make you stronger the way a repaired weld can be harder than the original joint. But there's a difference between testing and dismantling. There's a difference between a child who pushes back and a child who pushes you out. And the hardest thing a parent will ever do, harder than the late nights, harder than the double shifts, harder than braiding hair at midnight after a 12-hour day, is recognizing when your love has become a floor that someone is standing on instead of a gift they're holding. I spent 21 years being a floor. I let Emily walk across me because I thought that's what fathers do. I thought that's what Maria would have wanted. And maybe, for a while, it was. When Emily was small and the world was big and she needed someone solid underneath her, being a floor was the right thing. But Emily's not small anymore. And at some point, the floor has to become a door. And a door can open, but it can also close. And the person who built the door gets to decide which way it swings. I'm sitting on my porch right now. It's Sunday morning. The lemon tree is heavy with fruit. More than I can use, so I bag the extras and leave them on Doug's front step. Maria's coffee mug is on the windowsill. Mine is in my hand. The steam rises in the early light, and the neighborhood is quiet the way San Diego gets in the blue hour before the city wakes up. I'm not angry. I'm not triumphant. I'm not even sad, exactly. I'm something more useful than all of those things. I'm clear. And I'll tell you this, clarity isn't something you find. It's something you forge. You heat the metal. You position the joint. You strike the arc. And then you hold steady. Steady hands, steady breath, steady heart, until the bond is true. That's what I did. I held steady. And the weld held. There's a cruise ship leaving San Diego Harbor in about 6 weeks. A 10-day run to Cabo and the Mexican Riviera. I booked it yesterday.
Suite 612.
Balcony. Sunset side. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody took it from me. I earned it the way I've earned everything in my life. With these hands, in this heat, one bead at a time. And this time, I'm bringing a photograph of Maria. I'm gonna set it on the nightstand in the suite, next to the balcony door, so she can see the ocean. I think she'd like that. I think she'd like that a lot. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. We'll see you in the next one.